As soccer takes center stage this summer, Comcast helps bring the experience home to America. As the exclusive Spanish-language home of the tournament in the U.S., Telemundo is set to present its most expansive coverage ever. 700 hours of programming, live on-site presence at all 104 matches. And with multi-view and real-time 4K, Xfinity will deliver the most innovative and immersive sports viewing experience for fans watching on Telemundo, Peacock, Fox, and FS1. Learn more at ComcastCorporation.com.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different. And Messi only trusts Duracell.
Hey, it's Bill from the Bill Simmons podcast. FIFA World Cup 26 fans, listen up. As the official beer sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 26, Michelob Ultra is giving away $1 million worth of FIFA World Cup 26 tickets and prizes. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26. Michelob Ultra FIFA World Cup 26 superior access. No purchase necessary. Open U.S. residents 21 plus begins on December 1st, 2025. Ends on July 31st, 2026. Multiple entry periods. Visit www.MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26 for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
Hello there, Stanley Carr here. You know, I love collecting music and sports memorabilia. Want to know where you can find some? I'll tell you. Go to oldglory.com. This website features one-of-a-kind apparel from your favorite sports teams and musical artists. And I can help you get 15% off of all items. Use the code WWH135. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're always about the positive vibes here on the show. Before I introduce my guest today, I want to take this time to promote our brand new book, Champions for a Cause, Volume 1. It is a collection of interviews with some of your favorite wrestling personalities. I'm talking about Buff Bagwell, Mark Merrow, Al Snow, Jake the Snake Roberts, and so many others. You can find it now on Amazon.com as a paperback for $15. So get your copy now. It is an incredible, incredible read. With me right now, I've got a very special guest. He is a former WWF, AWA star, one half of the Killer Bees. I am talking about the one and only Jumpin' Jim Brunzell. Welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
Thanks, Stanley. I'm glad to be here. So, I do a couple of these a month, and it's sort of fun and connecting with the fans, and I promise to tell the truth.
Yes, this has been in the works for a while. So glad we could make this work. You're from Minneapolis, is that right?
Actually, from White Bear Lake, Minnesota, which is a little suburb just north of St. Paul, about 10 miles.
Okay. So in that area, so to speak, that Midwest area, a lot of wrestling. It's a big wrestling town, the AWA. Doing a little bit of research on your career, you actually were a football player prior to getting into wrestling. Were you always into sports?
Yeah, I was. I played football, basketball, and track in high school. And when I went to the University of Minnesota, I played football and track. And after I got done at the U playing football, my eligibility, I played 1 year semi-pro. And then I got a tryout with the Washington Redskins in 1972. Didn't make it. Came back. I had probably 19 or 20 credits left to get my degree. And at that time, Vern Gagne was grooming Ken Patera, who had just come out of the Olympics as a weightlifter, to be a pro wrestler. And Greg called me, his son, and said, Jim, how would you like to try it? And I thought, well, geez, I did some amateur, wrestling in college, just goofing around. And I thought, well, I'm in good shape. So we went through this, and it was Bob Bruggers, who played in the NFL, Khosrow Vaziri, who is a Iron Sheik, who did very well, God rest his soul. And the same with Bruggers, and Rick Flair, the Nature Boy, who's still, he just can't give it up. And then Greg and myself, So, I was in wrestling 28 years, had almost 5,000 matches, and wrestled all over the country, and wrestled in Japan 6 times, and Malaysia and Singapore and Australia. So I was very fortunate. I did have some surgeries. I've had 14 surgeries since I left wrestling, but that's pretty common. You talk to a lot of the guys, and they have a lot of backs and, hips and knees and shoulders. So, if you're in any business that long, especially a rough business, you're going to, it's going to take its toll on your body.
It definitely is. Were you always a wrestling fan prior to getting recruited by the Gagnes?
You know what, Stanley? My mom and dad would not let me watch wrestling because my dad was a naval pilot, and we flew all over and lived all over. And I remember in Memphis, Tennessee, it was 1958 or 1959. I watched this pro wrestling, and it was Sputnik Monroe against a guy named Billy Wicks. And Billy Wicks was the good guy, and Sputnik Monroe was the villain. And my mom and dad wouldn't let me watch it because it interfered with their Lawrence Welk hour. So needless to say, I didn't get to watch much pro wrestling. And my mom and dad, when I told them I'm going to try pro wrestling, they said, oh, Jesus. But, at that time, I was, 21, 22. And I just thought, well, it's a natural deal because I've been an athlete all my life, and I can jump and da-da-da. So, it worked out pretty good.
Yeah, and coming from a background like football, you kind of are used to having, contact. It's a contact sport. So you're constantly like working with your body, working with other people. So constantly like in that intense environment. And so did you feel that your football background helped prepare you for professional wrestling?
Oh yeah. The up and down, just the physicalness of both football and wrestling, and, your balance, and you got to be a good athlete. And, it was a process, a learning process, but eventually I sort of got in the groove and, got my timing down, and, it worked out okay. So, I was very thankful, that I had an opportunity to play football. And then also, I think it was, very, very advantageous for me when I got into pro wrestling.
And so you start your training. I compare the two in terms of how intense the training and the workouts are with professional wrestling compared to something like football. Because yes, it's a sport, but also you're doing things that you're not really used to.
Well, that's true. Wrestling is got about 3 or 4 parts to it. And one is, getting in shape, being in shape. Another part of it is your moves. Another part of it is learning how to fall correctly so you don't, hurt yourself too bad. And then you have to have that timing in the ring. So, it's a learning process. And, a lot of guys told me, I remember I had my first match with Dennis Stamp, and it was a 15-minute draw, and it was in Fargo, North Dakota. And I thought the match was horrible, So I came in and I was sulking, and all of a sudden Dusty Rhodes came up to me and he said, Jimmy, he says, you're going to have a lot of stinkers in your life, so just learn from it. He said, don't worry about it. And that's what he said. And so I thought, well, okay, so, things got better. And it's fun. It's one thing about wrestling. You don't realize that wrestling in terms of, your activity and your bookings, when Brian Blair and I were the Killer Bees for a period of 3 years, we wrestled 27 days a month, every single month for 3 years. And it was, it was boom. It was pack your bag for 2 weeks, home for 3 days, pack your bag for 3 weeks, and it was, and Brian got hurt. He had to have knee surgery and I had a couple concussions, but I mean, people, I don't think the wrestling fan really thought or knew of, the strain that we were in, not only physically, but mentally. And also if, you had a family, you're gone all the time. My wife did a wonderful job, bringing up my kids.
It takes so much out of you. You really have to work with your body and prepare as much as possible for this lifestyle, because you're on the road so much, sacrifices, and you're away from your family constantly. So it definitely does take a toll on you.
Yes, without a doubt. I mean, mental, physical, it's just you have to accept that. And although when you are a pro wrestler, you have a little bit of leeway in sort of like time, you can plan ahead. Like you might have to ask for, a 2-week, holiday to go to Disney World, 3 months ahead of time. But, at least you can make some plans. And, it worked out okay.
Who would you consider to be some of the mentors that helped guide you along when you broke in the business that you credit today for your success?
Oh, gosh. Well, couldn't have done anything without Vern Gagne, because he saw, Greg and I were, he was a quarterback and I was a wide receiver on our freshman team at the university, and became good friends. And then after his sophomore year, Greg transferred to Wyoming to play quarterback. So I knew Vern, and I just thought, well, I'm an athlete and I can, try to, master it. And it was just so happens that I was a state high jump champion, and I jumped 6'4" and 1/4 when I was in high school. And then I jumped 6'7" and 1/2 when I was in college. And Vern, he always loved to have a drop kick. So he asked me one day, we're in the ring, and he says, how high do you think you can drop kick? And I said, well, I don't know. And so he put his hand up about his head, and I hit it with both my feet. And then he put his hand over his head about a foot, and I hit them both. And he says, you're going to be a good drop kicker. So that was good. And I used that. I was blessed with, white men can jump, at least I could. And then it was, a gift that helped me through, 20-some years of wrestling.
You had mentioned a bit ago about your first match, how you felt.
Yes.
You didn't feel it went as well as you wanted to. What pieces of advice did you get from people in the back, whether it was from Vern or Greg or someone else, that kind of helped you figure things out going forward?
Well, like anything, Stanley, it's experience. You learn from experience. No, I don't care what it is, what job you're in, but you learn day to day on something, that might go, it might not go your way, but then you got to adjust. And the same thing in wrestling. It's sort of a dance between the good and the bad. And there's different, scenarios and different, timing aspects. But, I think the guys that helped me a lot, first of all, Vern Gagne giving me the opportunity, and then Billy Robinson training me. He was a little bit of a sadistic guy. And then, just having the opportunity to be around the talent that was in the AWA. I mean, Nick Bockwinkel was one of the greatest champions ever. And he was like 17 years older than me. And I did 2 or 3 hour draws with him. And he was just magnificent. And, and then you get Bobby Heenan, and Hulk Hogan, God rest his soul, mentioned, they asked him who he thought was the greatest all-around wrestling talent, and he said Bobby Heenan. And he was right, because Bobby could do anything. His timing was superlative. He was never short for loss of words, and then his timing in the ring for taking bumps. And he was just, I remember one time we came back from Denver, and Denver used to be a great town, and the guys would party pretty late in the morning and then have to get up at 8 o'clock and fly to Minneapolis and then do 3 hours of TV and then do an hour TV show taped and then go to Milwaukee or Chicago. So Bobby Heenan, he had about 3 or 4 guys that he managed. So he was going to speak for all these different guys. And he saw that we had like, 2 or 3 sheets, for the shows that we were taping. And he went to lean over Vern Gagne and Wally Garbo to see where his position was in the interviews. So as he was leaning over, Vern Gagne sort of went and looked up at him, and he says, "Heenan, you've been drinking." And Bobby says, "You can't smell vodka." That's what sort of guy he was, and he was just incredible. God, he was so funny.
Yeah, I had your partner Brian on the show. They were talking about ribs that you guys would play back in the day. It seems like it was a crazy time, but it was a way to sort of pass the time as you guys were on the road traveling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't like to do that because I thought, do unto others as you want to have done to you. But we had some notorious ribbers, the British Bulldogs were probably the worst that I saw because, they used to have a guy, Terry Taylor, very talented guy. And he went as I can't remember what he was, but
the Red Rooster.
Yeah, the Red Rooster. But before that, he was like a gentleman or something like that. The model. No, that was Rick Martel. So, but I got to tell you, Terry Taylor used to dress real nice. He had Sanzabelt pants, $50, $60, $70 pants. And the doggone British Bulldogs, every time Terry would go wrestle, they'd open his locker and they cut his slacks off at his knees. So Terry Taylor'd come in and it looked like he had culottes on, they came to his knees. And they did that about 2 or 3 times. And he finally said, "Hey," he said, "you got your point across. You're funny, but at the same time, you're costing me money." And he didn't tell, Vince or the road agents. He just told those guys. So then they knocked it off. But I remember one time it was in Winnipeg, and I think it was in Winnipeg. Yeah. And it was an afternoon match, and I got done wrestling, and the main event was going to go on in 10 minutes, and it was the Bulldogs against somebody else. So I'm coming out of the ring, and I'm walking in the locker room, and I see Davey Boy, and he's right by my locker, and I had a hooded parka, and he's got a can of shaving cream, and he must have put 12 inches high and about he almost did the whole thing. I said, "Davey," he says, "Yes, Jimmy." I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Nothing." So he fills this daggone thing, and then I says, "You stinker," but that's the type of stuff, that they do, and most of it was pretty harmless, and that's fine.
Yeah, playful humor is not bad at all. It's one of those things where you want to have fun, lighten things up. You're constantly traveling. You want to have a little bit of fun in between all the intense moments,
Sure.
Now, you were with the AWA for so many years, and then you get to WWE, WWF at the time, this new environment. And this was right as they were transitioning and becoming, just a massive, colossal promotion, because this was around when Hogan and Macho Man and Andre were the faces of the company. They were big stars, and at the time they were also trying to build their tag division, which you and Brian were a part of as the Killer Bees. How did you guys get put together? Were you guys friends before WWF? Did you guys travel together? How did the Killer Bees come about?
Well, Brian was from Florida, and he wrestled mostly in the South. And, I wrestled in Georgia and North Carolina, and then, the AWA and then the WWF. So when we first got together, I had no idea that they were going to team us up. And then they decided, well, the Brian Blair and Jim Brunzell, we'll call them the Bees, the Killer Bees. So we this happened up in Toronto, and Billy Red, or not Billy Red, I'm trying to think of his name now, but he suggested that we, be called, the Killer Bees. So I believe it was Randy Savage's brother who had a couple of brand new pair of black and yellow tights. So we bought them from him, and sure enough, we formed the Killer Bees that night, and then we added the mask. And once we added the mask, it was a huge sensation, because no babyface or good guys, used the mask to win matches. In other words, we were beating the heels with their own, trickery.
And two, it was really, the tag division was just massive, because you had so many teams. You had yourselves, you had the Hart Foundation, you had the Rockers, just so many legendary teams that were a part of the WWF during this time. Talk to me about some of the people that you had the chance to work with, and who would you consider to be your favorite opponents?
Oh, geez. Well, I already mentioned Nick Bockwinkel, Bob Orton Jr., great at my age, probably in the top 3 or 4 talent of, the time I was in. And then, there was a lot of guys, Tito Santana is the best Hispanic wrestler there was. He was great in the ring, and he had a lot of fire. And Rick Martel, and let me see. Oh, yeah. Well, I already said Bobby Heenan is probably the greatest all around, but, and I'll say this, excuse me, the WWF wouldn't have happened without Hulk Hogan. He was the golden goose. He made everything happen. I mean, if Vern Gagne would have given him the AWA belt from Bockwinkel, Vince McMahon never would have had Hulkamania, and it wouldn't have nearly been. Vince was instrumental because he had that doggone TV, the power of the TV. Plus, he had traction and all over the country. So it was just something that happened that you just couldn't explain, and it was Hulkamania, and he was the golden goose.
Yeah, I feel like pro wrestling wouldn't be where it is today without someone like a Hulk Hogan. Really transcended professional wrestling, and he was just such an icon.
He was. And I'll tell you this: if people can, they can go. He worked in Japan too. I think it was for New Japan, and he used to wrestle Anuki, and Anuki was like 6'4", 260. And honest to God, Terry used to get down on the mat and roll around and reverse and everything. And he was a skilled athlete. He was 6'6" and 300 pounds, and he was a hell of a guitar player too. And he learned how to talk, but he was a heck of an athlete, and that's how come he became what he became. He had everything together.
Did you guys wrestle in Japan?
Oh, yes. Greg and I did. Brian and I didn't. I went there 6 times, and I had a couple partners. Matter of fact, I was partners with Nick Bockwinkel one time. That I don't know how they got us, but I think I was there with Greg once. And then I was there 4 times by myself, and it was always All Japan with Baba, Giant Baba.
Compare the two cultures, because when you're in front of an American audience, it's very loud, rowdy, lots of excitement. In Japan, it's very different.
It is. In Japan, the fans are pretty well educated, and they can watch a match, and they can tell who's good and who's bad, and they can also echo, their approval, or they boo. But I've had a couple draws over there, and there's a lot of applause like that, and their wrestling is a little more. It's not as heelish. I mean, they're rugged. I mean, they don't get by with cheap heat, like poking in the eye and throwing, whatever it is. And they educate their fans, very well. And honest to gosh, I mean, I was in that doggone arena sumo hall, and they had like 25,000 people in there. And it was great. The Japanese people were wonderful, very accommodating. And it took me a couple times over there to get acclimated to the food.
Yeah, the food I've heard is pretty good. It is.
You just got to know what to eat. And then, they have these vendors at night. They come in these trucks and everything is sort of, boiled in grease. So yeah, I got a little sick from that one night. So I itched that. But, I had a lot of rice and a lot of fish and a lot of Sapporo beer.
Okay. So you and Brian were partners for so many years, and then eventually you guys split off and you became a singles wrestler in the WWF. Talk to me about making that transition and kind of, I was talking to Brian a while ago about how you guys had pitched the idea of winning the belts in the company, but unfortunately it never happened. Did you ever get an explanation?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Stanley, and I'm going to take the heat because most of the heat belongs to me. Vince McMahon and I did not get along from day one. And we sort of butted heads. And I sort of fit into the groove at that time. But to be honest with you, we sued him right off the bat because and I don't know if you are privy to this, but in our original contract with the WWF.
This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at Accenture.com/Spotify.
It said that talent would make 25% of the gross of outside revenue. Okay, so all these dolls, these action figures that were made, they weren't made by the WWF. They were made by different companies. So that's outside revenue, and we were supposed to get 25%. It turned out we got 8% of the net. So any fool can see, geez, we got screwed out of, thousands of dollars. So we sued Vince and we won. And then here's another thing that a lot of people don't know. Greg Gagne, before I left, he was approached by a company that was making these action figures. I think it was LJN. And he and I were the high flyers and had a lot of success, and we were together almost 10 years too. So Greg, like a schnook, signed my name on the contract and with him. And then all of a sudden the production came out of high flyers. And I got a call from the office and saying, hey, Vince wants to talk to you. So I walk in there and here there's action figures of Greg and I standing on his desk. And he said to me, he says, can you explain this? And I said, no. Greg had signed my name, forged my name, and caused them to make this. Meanwhile, the LJN or whatever the company was, they sent my upfront share of $18,000 to Vince. Because I had been under contract with him. So not only did we sell him or get the money, that he owed us from the 25% of the gross, but I got the $18,000 back. So he didn't like me at all. And it was a foregone conclusion that, I knew that we would never get the belts. I mean, we had an opportunity. we beat them with the, I can't remember if it was in Toronto or Montreal. We beat the Heart Foundations using the mask, and they said, no, somebody wasn't in the ring, right? But it got over like a son of a gun, but it just never happened.
You split up. You became a single star.
Yep.
Talk to me about how that came about and any memories you have of being a singles competitor.
Well, originally I was a singles competitor when I went to North Carolina, and I was a Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion down there, and I wrestled Harley Race and Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat, who's another great one. He's in the top 5. And, I remember Jim Barnett, who was booking in Atlanta. He told me, he said, this is the way he talked. He said, Jimsy, he says, what do you want to do in professional wrestling? And I said, I'd love to be the world champion. But I said, right now, I want to go home. I've been in Georgia, and Charlotte, and I just like to go home. And he says, I just want to tell you something. If you go work for Vern, it'll be the biggest mistake you make in your professional career. And I said, well, listen, I've worked every day down here in Charlotte for, 2 years. And I said, I'm going home. So I went home, and I'll never forget, they put Greg and I back together, and we had our biggest year. We made like $85,000. I think it was 1981. And so Barnett, I run into him, and he says, Jimsy, how's things going in the AWA? And I says, Jim, I had the biggest year of my life. Thanks a lot for your help. And then I walked away.
It's hilarious. So being on the road for so many years, being in a tag team, breaking off into singles, had this amazing career. Outside of wrestling, I know you're very passionate about giving back. You were involved with so many causes over the years. Let's talk about the ones that you're very passionate about and getting involved with, such as juvenile diabetes.
Well, I did that, and I did that up in Winnipeg. I helped. I was part of a picture deal, the number of the kids, and it was hard for me to be involved, because I lived in St. Paul, and this was Winnipeg. But, every opportunity, I think there's a couple of different pictures with some of the kids that had juvenile diabetes. And then when I got more or less reacclimated to the Twin Cities in St. Paul, I became active in my church trying to raise money for our maintenance fees, our maintenance problems. So I did that for, 5, 6, 7 years. And then I wound up getting a job. I needed to work. It's hard to believe that you needed to work, but I needed to work to compensate. I had a gym, and it was called Jumpin' Jim Brunzell's Gym, and it was just above water. So I needed all the money I could get. So I actually worked for a company called Delco Enterprises, which was, now it's been bought out by a huge conglomerate on the East Coast, but it was a company that all your maintenance needs were, I had the Mall of America and the University of Minnesota, and you could make a good living. But then again, in the real world, you're dealing with different salesmen, and you're dealing with the trouble of dealing with people, and enough to make a living, you have to, cut a little bit off your profit margin to keep the business. So I was glad that when I got retired from that.
Well, let's talk more about the stuff that you were able to do as far as the juvenile diabetes cause and how you were able to participate in those events. Can you talk about the types of events you were involved with and elaborate a little bit more about it, if you can?
Well, basically, most wrestlers are involved this way as they come. If they have a fundraiser that they're working with, or something that they want to help, they'll do like autograph sessions, and that's what we did. In Winnipeg, you charge X amount of dollars for an autograph, and then the money would go to juvenile diabetes. And that's basically what it was, because there wasn't enough time for you to do something for a cause that, would interfere. It probably interfere with your travel. So, you had to space the time, that you're going to be here or there to, do these autograph sessions. And that's basically what it was until, I wound up, coming back home, and it was a lot easier working with the maintenance company at the St. Mary's of the Lake Church in White Bear Lake than it was going to Winnipeg back and forth and then, different areas. So, it was, I did what I could, and I was fortunate that I think both the juvenile diabetes and, the maintenance department at St. Mary's did well. And I was just happy that things were successful.
Were you involved with like any events like races or any kinds of fundraisers that were supporting the causes?
I can't remember, Stanley, but I think basically what it was more or less a meet and greet, because for one thing, I couldn't run anymore. My knees were shot, and so I didn't get involved in any of that. But and basically my shoulders and hip were shot too. So, like I say, it was basically, just the autograph session.
Well, talk to me about seeing these kids that are going through a struggle, right? They're going through a struggle. You never know what somebody's going through, and they want to be able to get like out of this mood that they're in so that they can enjoy a couple hours just of entertainment and don't have to worry about the stuff that's going on in their life.
Well, if you can bring a smile to somebody's face, you've done your job, and that's what I try to do. Try to be uplifting, try to be positive, and, joke with them. And God blessed me with an incredible life. I survived a business which is not conducive to family life or married life. But, I every day I'm thankful for my gifts, and I mention that in my prayers. So, it's just you got to do what's right and go from there.
Well, it's very heartwarming to be able to put a smile on someone's face when they're going through something, like I said a bit ago, and you're out there making a difference in the community by going out there and supporting these kids that are going through a hard time.
Yeah, well, that's part of my job. I mean, you have to help the people that help you. So, there's a lot of fans out there that, are suffering from this and that and whatever. And if you can lend a helping hand to help them or lift them up, then more power to you.
You'd mentioned a bit ago about doing some work with your church. Were you doing any other outreach? Have you ever participated in like any outreach events or outreach groups in your community at your church?
No, not really. It was basically, trying to come up with, actually what we did was, I have some friends that are musicians in a rock and roll band. And for 6 or 7 years, they had a huge concert on our church grounds, and that money was used for the maintenance. So we were very successful for that. And I think I got to the point where I was getting too busy, and I just sort of said, hey, I've got to bow out of this. So they stopped using the rock and roll band, and they started using, I can't remember what it was, but it didn't do very well. So, I was sorry to see that, but we had a good run of 6 or 7 years.
That's amazing, bringing in a group of musicians to play for a special cause and having your name out there attached to that. That's a big deal.
Well, I'm known pretty well in the White Bear area and have been, since the 60s. So I was very fortunate, to be, a member of this St. Mary's of the Lake ministry that helped, with the maintenance. So it just was something natural for me. And because I was in the business, I could help them. And then also, raise money for when we had the GB Layton band, to come and perform. And it seemed it worked out very well.
Why do you feel passionate about giving back to your community?
Well, I just think, most people, you get someplace with hard work and, you strive and you have goals. But during that time, there's a lot of people that help you. Nobody really does it by themselves. And I was very fortunate that I chose the right people. And, through my wrestling, plus, I owe all the credit to our family, to my wife, Mary, of 51 years, because I was gone so much. And both my kids have just done wonderful. My daughter's working for the school board of White Bear Lake. She's got two sons, our grandsons, and one was going to school in Italy, and the other one is all state in soccer and is going to go to the University of Minnesota School of, I'm trying to think of the name of it, but business, Carlson School of Business there. And, and my son, Jim the Third, owns his own film festival, and it's called Sound Unseen. And he just came back from France, and he was over at the Cannes Festival, and he's all over his Tribeca. He does one in Calgary, and he did one South by Southwest and in Texas. So like I say, Stanley, I've been very blessed, and I just thank the good Lord every day that, I say every day, bless my day, show me your way.
Oh, that's very cool, though, that you got a very active family and they're doing so many cool things. Do you at all keep up with your partner, keep in touch with Brian? And
Oh, yeah. We just talked, and, we do these autograph sessions at these WrestleCons or Comic-Cons. A couple weeks ago, we did Boston, and we did New York City. And then the next 2 weeks later, we did Newark. And then now we're going to be going to, let's see, I'm going to look at it right here. There's one in Waterloo, Iowa, and then there's the Charlotte, the Gathering, which is July 24th.
Nice.
And that's a couple days. And let me see, these guys, they book you so far in advance. You think, holy smokes. You
guys are in demand. You guys are popular.
Well, yeah, but you get a call in April and they want to book you for next June, a year ago or a year later, and you think, hey, but that's the way it is. And we've been fortunate, and it's sort of fun. It gives us an opportunity, Stanley, to make money and then also see some of our friends, and to thank the people that supported us all those years.
Well, it has to feel good when you get people coming up to you and telling these stories of watching you growing up, and that they're a part of your childhood, and it just brings a lot of good feelings inside, I'm sure.
Well, it does. And it's funny because my mom went to one of my matches, and it was at the St. Paul Civic Center. And she says, when I called her up when I got home, and I says, what'd you think? And she says, I'll never go to those again. She says, it reminded me of the Roman gladiators. So I said, Mom, you don't have to go again. So she never went. So that was fine. But, I told her, I said, Mom, I can handle myself. I've trained, I've been doing this, X amount of years now. And so she just says, we didn't talk much wrestling when I'd come home and see my parents.
Wrestling has changed so much over the years. It has evolved. And as you're going to these conventions, do you at all see some of the new people coming up? Are you keeping up to date with some of the wrestling promotions? What do you think of the? You know what,
Stanley? I can't watch it anymore because, to me, it's the AEW and the WWE or WWF. they look alike. I mean, they all yell, they all, there's no baby face, there's no heel, there's no guy that, more or less is humble. They're all braggadocious. And then you go in and you watch TV and you see matches that are so contrived. It's not possible to do all these little high spots and all these false finishes. You're watching boom, 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 boom. Nothing means anything. And then you get people jumping off the top rope or a big freaking ladder in the middle of the ring. So, I'm happy for those guys that are making, I heard the average salary in the WWE now is $350,000. And the most I ever made was $102,000. But, and we were working, like I say, 27 days a month for 3.5 years. The whole deal about wrestling is it's a TV deal now. I mean, that has given it the big worldwide exposure that it is enjoying right now. And these people get on there and they see different talent. But the problem is that there's so many, little feeder systems that you can't really have a guy that doesn't have much experience, expect to be, pushed as this or that. And more or less, these guys have got to do their time, learn their trade and get the timing right and everything. And that, that takes 1 to 2 years, I think. And, I would say that Bob Orton's kid is the best right now. And
Randy Orton.
Yeah, he's incredible. And, there's some other good ones, but I watch him and I thought, man, this guy's good. And then that's about it.
Have you ever gone to a local show in your area? Have you ever gone to any independent shows?
The only independent shows I go is when I sign autograph. Like they'll have you come and sign in, and I'll watch maybe 5 minutes of a match or 10 minutes of a match and just see, you can basically tell, depending upon how much experience, the guys in the ring have, and then how is the reaction from the crowd. So, I'm happy for them because they, they're learning their trade and they're making a little bit of a living, but it's so hard now to compete with, the TV, because if you're not seen on TV, they can't say, hey, he's a star, I'm going to go see him. With these indie shows are, maybe 1 or 2 guys are going to make it out of, I don't know, 2 or 3 of the indie companies. So it's a crapshoot.
Well, the other thing too is you have social media and the internet, because that also is a useful tool for young stars to take a camera, cut a promo, put it up on their Facebook page or whatever, and that'll get seen by thousands of people. And then eventually from there, they could get discovered and get signed to a promotion, and it just goes from there. So you got it.
Hopefully that happens. I mean, there's so much out there. It's just, and there's so few spots, Stanley. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, there's so few spots that are available for upcoming talent. And that's just the way I feel.
Did you ever think about becoming a trainer or
Nope.
Never did?
No, because the style that I did probably is not complementary to what is going on now in pro wrestling. I mean, like I said, it's all action, it's all high spots, it's all false finishes. I mean, things come out of the clear blue sky and they're in and out and up and down and nothing means anything. So I mean, that's what I see. And a lot of my, friends who've been in the business with me the same amount of time agree. So, I'm just glad there's an opportunity for a lot of guys to make, a decent living. And then hopefully, a lot of guys will have their dreams, come true.
Jim, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to my listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you and all the cool things you're doing?
I used to be online, but it got too out of whack. I really can't say. I know that I talk to people and people always say, how come you're not on the doggone WWE Hall of Fame? So I suggest to all the fans out there that believe Brian and I, and also Greg Gagne and I should be in the WWE Hall of Fame, is to get a hold of Triple H. And he's vice president. And I've sent him a number of notes saying, hey, don't forget about us. And, I'm sure he has a big sway in terms of, who gets in and who doesn't. And I'm so glad that Barry and Bobby got in, just this past time. So, who knows? If it happens, it happens. But I appreciate your time, Stanley. It was great. Do a great job and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. You're more than welcome to come back, by the way.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
You too. And remember, get your copy of Wrestling with Heart Presents Champions for a Cause Volume 1 now, available on Amazon as a paperback for $15. All your favorite wrestling personalities are in there, talking about Mark Merrow, Jake the Snake Roberts, Buff Bagwell, Tito Santana, and so many others. Check it out. I'm Stanley Carr, and I'll see you next time.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.